This is going to be Lecture 8, the Inchoate offense. Inchoate means imperfect. It means that a crime doesn't have to be completed. It's not completed crime. We have certain laws on the books to prevent crime from being completed. Try to apprehend those that are criminally minded and deal with them before they commit the crime. For instance, some group that's going to set a bomb off, you don't want to let them set the bomb off. Also, if someone's about to do something horrific like that and you can catch them before they actually take the final step, we need to be able to do that so that people aren't injured. So it's to prevent criminally minded persons from escaping justice when it is only a matter of circumstance or chance that prevented the completion of the crime. First one we're going to talk about is solicitation to commit certain crimes, and this is where a person goes to another party, a secondary person, and with the intent that they commit a crime by asking them, encouraging, or requesting them to commit the crime. It's a specific intent crime, and there must be some sort of a communication. Let's look at the Penal Code section real quick. On Penal Code section 653, subsection F, defines a crime of solicitation as follows. So think about solicitation, the word solicitation. Ask someone to do something for you. Every person with intent that a crime be committed solicits another to join in the commission of specifically listed crimes, including bribery, murder, carjack, robbery, burglary, grand theft, receiving stolen property, extortion, perjury, subordination of perjury, which means to get someone else to lie, forgery, kidnap, arson, assault with a deadly weapon, dissuading a witness, or certain sex crimes, sodomy by force, etc. Crime classification is it's a felony. There's got to be specific intent. Now, there doesn't have to be an overt act in this. The proposal is the overt act. The request is the overt act. Crime is complete whether the person being solicited agrees or not, or whether or not the person solicited previously contemplated the crime themselves. Conviction requires 2 witnesses or 1 witness and other corroborating evidence, meaning that some separate evidence besides a witness testimony. The witnesses may include the person who were solicited, person or persons. You can make an arrest, and corroboration is required at the time of trial only. The solicited person's testimony can be sufficient for everything short of a conviction. Other definitions of to solicit can include approach with a request, to tempt, to lure, to entreat, to plea, to appeal. Defenses to solicitation. Communication to the other party. The defendant only has to attempt communication to the solicited party. The solicited party need not be able to comprehend the solicitations. Okay, so Betty wants to kill her husband, Mylan. She goes to Joe, who is the town bully, but does not know that he's deaf. He cannot hear. She goes to him and she pleads with him in a bar in front of a number of witnesses to kill her husband, and even tries to hand him $1,000. He can't understand what she's saying, but there are 2 off-duty officers there that arrest her for solicitation to commit murder. The crime is complete, even though he couldn't understand her. So if there's a request, it works. To have a withdrawal of solicitation must be complete and voluntary. So, here we go. Question on solicitation. Mary wants to kill her husband. She puts an ad in the newspaper for a mercenary. Soldier Fortune magazine would be one of those magazines where you could try to hire mercenaries, which are basically trained soldiers who work for money, for hire. John is deaf, responds to Mary's ad. She meets him and verbally solicits him to commit the murder of her husband. Officer Jones overhears solicitation. Is this a good solicitation, even though John could not hear or comprehend the solicitation? And the answer is yes, and we used this in the previous example. Next, we're going to look at conspiracy to commit crime. Conspiracy is a crime that we charge quite frequently, and it works rather well. The federal government uses it a lot. We use it in local law enforcement. We take it before the grand jury to try to get indictments because we can have somebody undercover that could be working with the suspects in the case and gather the evidence quite easily. Conspiracy defined. A conspiracy occurs when two or more persons agree to commit any crime and either one of them does an overt act in the furtherance of the conspiracy. So the breakdown of the elements include that you have to have two or more persons. You can't have a conspiracy with yourself. You have to have two or more persons. And they agree to commit a crime, and the overt act in the furtherance of the conspiracy takes place. Let's give you an example here. And crime classification for conspiracy is a felony. If I take a class of my students, say 20 students, and I say we're going to rob a bank, and the plan to rob the bank includes starting a fire somewhere that'll draw the police and fire personnel, or creating an explosion or smoke bomb or something, and we're going to do that about 2 miles away. We're also going to commit another robbery, or at least make the person turn the robbery alarm on, so most of the units will go that way. We're going to scan the police radio channels to be able to verify that they are in fact busy on a secondary case, and then we'll actually go hit our bank. So some of the things that we're going to need: we're going to need duct tape to tie folks up. We're going to need some ski masks to cover our face. We're going to need some firearms. We're going to make some pipe bombs. They're going to be smoke bombs, which just basically take threaded pipe, cap them, put some powder in there, some black powder, and fuse them and light them up. So 20 of my students, I've divided up who's going to drive, who's going to handle the guns, who's going to handle the money, etc., etc. Probably going to need some bags to put the loot in. And we've sat down and we have an elaborate plan. Everybody knows that we're going to do this. We're going to go out and steal some cars or some license plates off cars. And so at this point, although we've all agreed to commit the crime, there's no overt act in the furtherance of the conspiracy. Once that agreement's been made and I go to Home Depot and I purchase the pipe and I purchase the duct tape, which normally this would be nothing wrong with that. It's not illegal. But in this case, that is the overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. I've taken that next actual step towards getting the equipment I need to commit this robbery, and at that point we're all guilty of conspiracy. Conspiracy is a specific intent crime. Have to have specific intent, requiring the accused to want to complete an unlawful act or do a lawful act by unlawful means. Could also be something like the Martha Stewart case. We just had a conviction here where she lied, but the bottom line is she got arrested because she got insider trading information, which is illegal. If you know that you're going to buy a company, you can't release that information because the stock's going to go up. Everyone that owns stock has to have the same basic info or the same ability to make money. And in Martha's case, she sold some stock on a tip that was an insider tip. So that would be two people who are conspiring to do what? To sell stock. Well, that's a lawful act, but they did it by unlawful means. Examples: intent to commit. of intent to commit conspiracy can include any misdemeanor or ordinance. Yes, if you have a conspiracy to commit a misdemeanor, you have the misdemeanor, and now you have a felony charge. Conspiracy is a felony, so you could change it to a felony. Other examples could include things like I've worked in narcotics where you had three people who were involved in narcotic sales. You go to the first person, you tell them what you want, and they give a hand signal. Second person, you go to the second person, you give them the money, and then you walk around a corner and there's a garden hose which is hanging out of like a third-story window, which is lowered down, and two balloons of heroin come out of the garden hose in your hand. Now, the criminals are not very sophisticated, and in this they think I have three separate things that are happening, and therefore the officers can't arrest me. When in fact we can. Number one, they all show that they're involved in conspiracy. The second thing is they've all been involved in the sale of the heroin, whether they want to believe that or not, but they are, because they've all taken an active part. Remember when we talked about in the previous chapter or lecture, we talked about principles to a crime. They're all actively aiding and abetting. Examples of lawful acts completed by unlawful means. Price fixing. One of the things about having open markets is that when you have these big companies like Shell, Texaco, you're not supposed to have monopolies. In other words, American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T, was broken up in the 80s by the U.S. Department of Justice because they controlled all of the phone companies all over America. And they had to break those up into what they call baby bells. They broke them up into smaller companies. One of the reasons was they could price fix. They could control how much it would cost for somebody to get telephone services. When you have the gas companies or oil companies, they're not supposed to be communicating about prices of gasoline. They can see what the prices of gasoline are, but they're not supposed to be comparing and controlling the prices. That's what price fixing is all about. Insider trading, we already talked about that, where somebody, I have a friend that it was a secretary for actually the sale of Pacific Bell to Southwestern Bell. And that person was locked down in a hotel room. All the executives were locked down. They cut off phone lines. They didn't want people knowing that the stock was going to be sold because the amount of the stock would go up, and therefore it would cost the company more, but people could make millions of dollars. Restricting the trade of another business, this is also unlawful. Microsoft was found guilty of obstructing Netscape Navigator. Microsoft has Explorer, you have Netscape Navigator. They told all of these computer companies that they couldn't have the Windows platform on their computers. They wouldn't sell them licenses unless they had their Explorer on the desktop of the computer, and that was putting Netscape out of business because there's already one Explorer. Why are you going to have two Internet Explorers? Antitrust laws. And again, antitrust laws have to do again with the control of the marketing prices and making sure that it's an open market and everybody is able to sell. There's no monopolies or control over pricing. So again, elements for conspiracy must be proved that the accused entered into a criminal agreement with specific intent to commit a crime or perform an act prohibited by the conspiracy statute. Normally, the overt act is used along with other factors to establish the intent to commit the specific crime, including procuring a gun to commit a robbery or murder, or procuring burglary tools to commit a burglary. Terminology. Overt act. More than mere planning. So getting together and writing down on a piece of paper the floor plans, that's not the overt act. That's just planning. Need not amount to an attempt to commit the crime or even be unlawful in nature. So again, going to buy the duct tape or the pipe, that's not unlawful in nature, but in association with this crime, it is a furtherance of the conspiracy. The other thing, very important, the act must be in furtherance of the conspiracy and must take place within California. If I drove to Lake Tahoe over the weekend and was over the state line when I bought the tape and the pipe, it wouldn't count. It would not be in furtherance of the conspiracy. Discussion regarding conspiracy. The two or more persons involved in the conspiracy may be husband and wife. The persons must be legally able to testify. They can't be lunatics. They can't be someone who, the testimony could be challenged. If any undercover officer involved, there must be at least two other persons who are defendants. This protects, folks from entrapment. I'm not going to walk up to you and say, "Hey, you want to commit a crime?" And the person says, "Oh, I don't know." And I say, "Well, let's just talk about it for fun. Let's agree that we're going to, commit a crime, and I'll go out and I'll show you. I have some guns out here, and we'll be able to use." There's got to be two additional people other than the officer. So the officer can't be one of those two. Otherwise, it's going to be looked at as entrapment. The accused need not know the other conspirators. With the internet nowadays, there's a lot of things going on, specifically trafficking of stolen property, internet trafficking of child pornography, things like that. ID abuse, using somebody's identification. Each accused must know and enter an unlawful agreement with at least one other member of the conspiracy. But all parties to the conspiracy are equally responsible for the actions of all other parties in the furtherance of the conspiracy. Conspiracy includes those crimes committed in preparation for, during the commission of, during the escape and arrest, whether planned or not. Meaning that, let's go back to my first example. We're going to rob the bank. And we're going out to rob the bank. And two of my students are supposed to steal cars, and they get a little bit overzealous, and the person resists them trying to carjack the car, and they hit the person in the head, and the person dies. Now, this is a murder. Guess what? Everyone included in that conspiracy is responsible for that murder. However, there's some case law that says that, let's say that Johnny is supposed to steal a car, and he sees a beautiful woman in the front seat of the car he's going to steal, and he kidnaps her and he rapes her and takes a car. He gets caught. We can be charged with the auto theft as part of the conspiracy, and also the original bank robbery, conspiracy to commit bank robbery, but we can't be charged with the rape because that's not in furtherance of the conspiracy. We didn't agree to allow him to go out and rape somebody. That's not part of the plan, never was, never will be. Therefore, we're not responsible for that crime. So again, conspiracy does not include independent crimes not in furtherance of the conspiracy by individual members of the conspiracy. Also, somebody new joins the conspiracy. Crimes committed before the conspirator joined in the conspiracy cannot be charged against them. If I joined the conspiracy 3 days in and they've already stolen the cars, but they haven't got the duct tape and the pipe yet, I can't be charged. The minute that I go and buy the duct tape and pipe, or someone else does after I've agreed to commit the bank robbery, then I can be included. The planned crime does not have to be completed or even attempted. Remember this. So you can find out that this is occurring, go undercover, participate in the conspiracy, and before they even do the crime, you can arrest them. The criminal agreement and the overt act constitute the offense of conspiracy. Merging. Now, definition of merging is when they actually commit the crime. Completing the crime does not relieve the responsibility of the conspiracy, meaning that we go and do the bank robbery. You have both conspiracy to commit bank robbery and bank robbery, but they merge at the point that they actually commit the crime. Okay, let's see if you've learned this information. Question number 1 on conspiracy. Freddie Kelly is present during a number of conversations with other charged conspirators. During these meetings, the other defendants planned a robbery. Freddie was not involved in the planning or commission of the robbery. Let's say Freddie is someone who is a waiter at a restaurant, and these are his friends, and he's listening intently. Can Freddie be convicted of conspiracy because he was present during the meeting where conspiracy was formed? Give you a second to think about this. The answer would be no, because Freddie's not participating in the conversations. You have to have some assertive uh, commitment that the guy goes, okay, I'm up for this, or I'll do this, or give me what am I going to do as part of this conspiracy? Question number two: a victim's walking down the street when she was stopped and restrained by a first defendant or suspect. Second defendant takes her wallet from her pocket. Now these guys go running down the street, and you pull up and you catch them. You do a stop on them. She identifies them as a suspect and explains to you that one seemed to know to hold her while the other one searched her for her wallet. Can we charge them with conspiracy? Okay, let's break this one down. Sounds like there was a plan, doesn't there? Someone was supposed to restrain and someone was supposed to take the victim's wallet. So these guys planned, and they actually made an assertive movement to do this. They moved forward to stalk someone who would be a victim. Uh, and let me talk a little bit about another case I know of. You have a case where it's a garment district. There's a lot of money being shipped around. There's couriers who actually go out and they carry money, and they have these carts. They're heavily armed, and they have usually two couriers, one with a shotgun who walks in front, and one with a handgun that pushes the cart. And they're moving around this district, and they have some robbers who are going to try to rob them. And the robbers are out looking for them, and they're actually able to arrest the robbers. They are asking people, have you seen the couriers? You know, we have a deposit for them, and people are telling them where the couriers are, but they're a little bit behind. And when they finally get there, there's a lot of cops. They arrest them, they catch them with guns, and they get them for conspiracy to commit robbery. Okay, abandonment of conspiracy. In order to avoid criminal liability, a conspirator must first withdraw from all aspects of the conspiracy. Make sure people know, hey, I'm not going to do this. And it's before the overt act takes place. Next thing is remain away from the scene at the time of the crime and make abandonment known to all Confederates prior to the crime. Although technically not required, it's also would be good to tell the authorities about the conspiracy. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to establish abandonment. Attempts to commit crimes. Attempt to find under Penal Code Section 664 is, and you need to remember the section 664, because if we have an attempt robbery, the section denoted on your report would be 664 slash, let's see, 664 / 211 PC. Every person who attempts to commit any crime but fails or is prevented or intercepted in the perpetration thereof is guilty of an attempt to commit the crime. Elements of an attempt. Specific intent to commit the planned crime. That's number one. Number two, direct, ineffectual, overt act toward the commission of the crime. Number three, ability or apparent ability to commit the crime. And number four, the attempted crime must have been legally possible of commission. So Joe got mad at Bill. He picked up a pistol, pointed it at Bill, pulled the trigger. What he didn't know was his wife had removed the bullets. Can't be charged with attempt murder because it's impossible to shoot a gun that's empty. Maybe brandishing. There may be some other charges we may have, assault, but we can't shoot somebody with an empty gun. Overt acts. Let's talk about that. You have to have specific intent that there must be a direct, ineffectual overt act. Mere preparation is not sufficient, and the act must come dangerously close to completion. So if I'm going to do here's a good example. If I'm going to do a burglary, and I have a Makita drill that's battery powered, and I go to the scene of the burglary and I start to drill out the lock in the door, and my battery dies on my Makita drill, and I abandon the crime, and I leave a fingerprint, and the next day the owner sees the drilled lock and calls you, and you go and you dust it and you get a good print, and you match me up with the live scan. Um, you've got me for attempt burglary. I came awfully close to breaking in. Had I not ran out of battery power, I would have been in. Examples of overt acts. These are some cases that have actually occurred. Defendant took a gun to his wife's house. He listened at the door to see if he could hear if anyone else was there with her. He had a friend go to the door to ask her to open it. He was convicted of attempted murder. He was going to kill her. Defendant took a woman to a doctor to determine if she had VD before putting her in a house prostitution. He was convicted of attempted pandering. Defendant grabbed cab driver by the neck and stated, "Give me your money." The cab driver drove off. This person was convicted of attempt robbery. There are more examples in this chapter in the book. Completion of the crime. The facts that the conditions rendered the actual completion of the crime impossible does not prevent the accused from being guilty of an attempt. An example. Now, pickpockets, that pickpocket, we talked about this earlier in earlier chapters, that's a felony. So reaching in someone's pocket and the person does not have any money, that is an attempt. You reached your hand in there, it just happened that there was no money in there, but you completed the crime of attempt. So it could be where the crime is interrupted uh, by human intervention. Somebody comes around the corner, scares you, you run off, or an act of God, a power failure, or mechanical failure, or a chance accident or fate, you slip and fall and hurt your leg, so you stop what you're doing. Human error, you break in the wrong place. Um, the method involved appears reasonably capable of completing the crime. Ability to commit the crime. There can be no crime of attempt if there is a legal impossibility of completion. For example, you can't attempt a murder on someone who's already dead. A stepfather cannot commit incest with a stepdaughter who is over 18. Abandonment may be used as a defense. Number one, when it's free and voluntary, and abandonment occurred before the act is put into final execution, and when there's no outside cause prompting such abandonment. In other words, you're about to drill the lock in the previous example I gave you on the burglary, and you say, "Oh, I don't need to do this," and you stop. Key terms in this chapter or lecture include solicitation, conspiracy, overt act, merging, attempts to commit crimes, overt ineffectual act, ability to commit a crime, and abandonment. See end of lecture 8.